Oh, I see 81 participants. Thank you, Pam. I see 81 participants. That's very exciting. Welcome, everybody.
Hey, Mindy, I can't hear you.
Oh, how about others? Can others hear me?
I can hear you. I
Yes.
can hear
Yep.
you.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear.
Okay, maybe I'll speak a little louder for whoever said that. Sorry. Yeah, so I think anyway, if you have questions or thoughts along the way, maybe put those in the chat, and so some others can interrupt me if need be, and I can answer those questions as we go. We will certainly have some Q&A in the middle and also at the end. So we can hopefully get your questions answered there. I don't necessarily want this to be a whole lot of talking at you. I'm hoping this will be more of a conversation, as much of a conversation, I guess, that you can have on Zoom. So welcome, everyone. We are really excited for our second year of the Utah Pollinator Habitat Program. And congratulations on getting your Native Plant Award. And we will go ahead and start here. So this is what we're gonna cover tonight. You can I'll flash this up on the screen in a minute, but before we even go there, I wanted to introduce Diana Cox-Foster of the National Bee Lab in Logan, Utah, and she will give a short presentation on native bees and pollinators, and I'm really excited that she agreed to join us tonight. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Diana Cox-Foster. I will stop sharing my screen and she can share hers.
Great. So thank you for inviting me to join in on the presentation here. And I'd like to begin by congratulating everyone for being selected for this program and excited to see where you take it. So just a little bit about myself. I have a PhD. I'm the research leader of the USDA ARS Pollinating Insect Research Unit, and we're located up here in Logan. We're co-located with Utah State. We're a federal lab. We do research on all the bees in the United States, so honeybees and also the native bees, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So in terms of my background, how I got to be here, I grew up in Colorado, fell in love with insects, and in particular bees, went off and got college degrees, both at Colorado State, and went off to Illinois for my master's PhD, a postdoc in Vanderbilt, where I picked up some molecular methods, asking about diseases and pathogens and how bees respond. And I was a professor at Penn State University for 28 years. And the position here came open, and in my years at Penn State, I helped lead the colony collapse disorder working group. So those of you may remember a mysterious disease that struck honeybees, where all the bees would leave the colony, and a lot of beekeepers experienced this. So I led the pathogen part. We soon realized that other bees were having issues too. So I came here to Logan to begin to work on all the bees. So our research in it, as I mentioned, we get to work on all the bees. We're also the home of the U.S. National Pollinating Insect Collection. It's a research collection, and it's focused on bees. And we're characterizing who those bees are, what they do, and how they work in the environment. And you guys are going to get to experience a lot of them. So just switch over in here, and I'll be glad to answer questions at the end or at the end of the webinar too. So as you may know, there's a partnership between bees and plants, flowering plants. So flowering plants get to provide pollen and nectar, and they provide an extra amount of that the bees can take part of that, but in turn transport the pollen nectar the pollen between different plants to help them set seed. So it's an ideal partnership, a win-win situation. And as you may know, a lot of the plants around us depend upon us, not only food, but also many of the crops and the plants that are out in our natural ecosystem. So we would be up a creek without a paddle if we didn't have the pollinators. And it's not just bees. This is a poster from a group, pollinator.org, and they have great information if you are interested. But we have bats, birds, butterflies, beetles, flies, and bees. And I'd like to say that in bees, it's just more than honeybees as well. So globally, there's over 20,000 different bee species, different kinds. Here in North America, 4,000. And we have to think of them as being keystones that, if you remember, like an archway, that there's a stone at the very top that keeps it all standing and going. That's what these bees are. They're really critical for the health of the environment and for our food supply. Here in US, most of the bees are actually found in American Southwest and desert land. You wouldn't think of that, the greatest diversity and number of species. Utah, we have over 1,087 different species. And if you look on the map here to the east of the Mississippi, it's only 770. So depending where you are in Utah, you're apt to have over 500 different species of bees that potentially will be visiting your flowers that you're planting. And so who are these bees? Honeybees are included here. We get the credit for bringing honeybees to North America. It came over with the Spanish over 500 years ago. And then the colonists, when they came into the East Coast as well. And we've taken them where we've gone because we can make use of them as our managed bee livestock. We also get honey and wax from them. Here in North America, we have bumblebees. They're also live in a eusocial colony, but it only lives for 1 year. So it's not like a long-lived honeybee colony. And then the majority of the bees we have are actually solitary bees. And you have to think of them as being single moms. Each female creates her own nest and provisions and does that. So what they might look like, you're going to find solitary bees that live in the ground. They actually dig holes down in the ground and passageways. This is shown for the alfalfa or alkali bee. It's a pollinator. And this is showing you a managed bee bed up in Washington State, where there's thousands, millions of these bees. And so the middle of the graph here, it shows how they dig a tunnel way down. And then down in there, they create cells where they bring the pollen and the nectar as a little ball, a provision we call it. And they lay the egg on it. And this egg will develop into a larva, which will eat that, and then go on to become a pupa over winter, and then emerge the following spring as an adult bee. We can also see this for solitary bees that live in cavities. And these include the popular mason bees. You may have seen like the bee hotels boxes that you can get with the little tubes in them. This is what these bees would like. And there's a whole variety of these bees that make use of these cavities, going from tiny little holes like 4 millimeters, less than 1/4 of an inch in diameter, on up to about 1/2 inch in diameter. And these bees, as you can see in the middle here, mom brings in either mud or they may pulp up plant material, create a wall, put the pollen nectar and lay that egg. So that's what this little white dot on top of the yellow mass there is the egg, which will hatch and develop in the larva. There's also leafcutter bees. You may have noticed this on some of your plants if you have roses and others, where you get like looks like you took a punch hole puncher and you create a little rounded circle out of it. These bees cut out those leaves and they bring it into the cavity, create like a little capsule, put the pollen nectar in there, seal it off. At the bottom, you can see how the egg hatches, develops into the larvae, and then it pupates inside of that. So these solitary bees, they only live for about a month or two as an adult. But one of the things you're going to see is that different species emerge at different points in time. So you may have a complete changeover in flowers in your garden, a complete changeover in the bees that come and visit. It's just part of the natural life progression. For bumblebees, these are ones where each queen, she comes out of hibernation in the spring and she goes out and has to create her own nest. So beginning, she brings in all the pollen and nectar, lays eggs, and she broods her bees. So these bees actually warm up the eggs and the larvae in there. There's some cool video out there that shows thermal imaging to show how they're heating that. And once the workers develop and emerge, they take over that process of gathering the pollen nectar, and she just lays the eggs for the future progeny. Late in the summer, like this period of time that we're in right now, new reproductives are going to be made, new future queens and drones, and they'll mate. The drones, the male bees, are not going to live through the winter, but those queens, the future queens, will go off and find a hiding place, so like a rodent hole or that, and they'll go into hibernation or diapause and come out next spring. And so here in Utah, we have over, I think, 30 different species of bumblebees, a huge variety of different colors and patterns on their bodies. And they may choose to find a rodent hole or a cavity like in a wood building. We've had people call in saying they found them under dog houses or in a barn. So they're looking for places that are sheltered to put their nests. And then lastly, we have the honeybees here. So inside a honeybee colony, for those of you who haven't seen them up close and personal, you have the queen bee. She's shown over here on the left of the picture. And she's basically the mom of all. She lays all the eggs in the colony. Those eggs hatch, the workers tend to it, they feed it a brood food. So they're the ones consuming the pollen and nectar and then secreting a proteinaceous rich diet. So like a milk diet that the larvae grow and develop on. They spin their cocoons and develop in the brood and then emerge after a period of about 21 days, going from the egg forward, as new workers. The males are just produced for reproduction. So inside the colony may have 10 to 40,000 individuals. Not all of them are out foraging at the same time. They're actually heating the inside of the colony. Colony is about our body temperature inside. And so the honeybee colony is dependent upon having that workforce to stay alive. For those of you thinking that you'd also want to become a honeybee keeper, it's extremely difficult these days because we know now that bees are in trouble. We've seen decline in honeybee colonies and other species. For honeybees right now, this is data from Bee Informed Partnership, where the beekeepers themselves report back about their losses. Annual losses right now are over 40, almost to 50% of all bee colonies dying each season. And that's from some of the most experienced beekeepers trying to combat a lot of the issues and problems. So it's a challenging process to keep your bee colonies alive if you are thinking of becoming a beekeeper. We also know that there are other bee species that are in trouble. We now have bees on the endangered species list. So some of those include the ones over at the top here, rusty patch bumblebee, Franklin bumblebee, and then there's one that's in the Western United States being considered for listing down at the bottom here, the Western bumblebee or Bombus occidentalis. This one at the bottom is of concern because it used to cover most of all the Western United States, all the different states, and now we do find it healthy populations in northern Utah and going up into Idaho and Wyoming, Montana, but other ranges have greatly condensed. So what's happening there, and how do you guys fit into helping to reverse some of the problems? So we can think that there are 4 P's that underlie most of the honeybee and the other bee issues: pesticides, pathogens, parasites, poor nutrition, and then climate does have an impact. You guys come into play because poor nutrition is one of the major factors. What do I mean by that? because of our land use changes and also how we've gotten rid of a lot of what we consider to be weeds, we don't have enough floral resources, flowers or sources of pollen and nectar for the bees. And we also know that climate, so drought, heat, does decrease the ability of the flowers to produce nutritious pollen. And so I like to tell people that we need more bee pasture. So hopefully through your plantings that you're going to be doing, you're going to be making an impact, I think, and I hope. And so that's where it's important. And so as Mindy will tell you here in a little bit, you're going to be getting plants that bloom all season long. As I just told you, we have a wide variety of different bees, and many of them will be coming out at a different point in the season. And those bumblebees and honeybees need nutrition all year round, going from spring to late fall when they go into diapause. And then also it'd be helpful for you to become a spokesperson and a cheerleader saying that you do need more pollinator planting statewide. And then as Mindy will tell you, we need to leave room for the bees to make their homes. So the bramble bushes that you have left over, the dead ones or bark twigs with around, those could be homes for some of these cavity nesting bees. And using ground without landscape cloths allows those ground nesting bees to get into nest and bumblebees in there. And then lastly, think before you spray a pesticide, because that is an impact. It can get into the pollen and nectar and can impact your bees. Because like the ones that you're trying to spray for, the pest insects, they are also affected by those pesticides. And this is what I'm hoping that you guys will achieve in a few years, getting a pollinator garden that looks as great as this with as much floral resources in place. And then we do have some fact sheets. They're available on the USU Extension site because we do partner with our university partners. So there's some great ones there that you can find easily there. Gardening for native bees. As you want to add to your plants that you put out in your gardens, this one that's on the left here by Jim Kane has a great list of plants, both native and ones that you can more easily buy. And it tells you which ones are low water usage as well. And then one of our other colleagues with Utah State, Joe Wilson, has these two great books here that would give you a lot more information about bees and help you try to figure out what bees you're actually going to see in your gardens. So I'm really excited for you. And again, congratulations. And I'll be glad to answer questions now or later on, depending on what time for Mindy. So thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Diana. Do we want to take a couple of questions, maybe through whoever's watching the chat? Do you have any questions there at this point?
We don't have any yet, but if anybody has any, you're welcome to raise your hand or unmute and go ahead and ask them.
One was, do wasps pollinate? I just saw that one.
Okay,
Yes.
we're starting to get some now. Yeah. Do wasps pollinate?
So there are some wasps that do minimal amounts of pollen. So some studies have shown that wasps can carry pollen to some shrubs and that. There are some pollen collecting wasps as well. So wasps offer other benefits too if you can keep their nests in an area that aren't going to be bothering you and your house, because they also are great pest control for some of the insect pests. So you may see a variety of wasps visiting your garden. So somebody asked a question about what bees sting. So all the female bees have that capability of stinging. The solitary bees are less apt to sting. They're only going to sting if you actually pinch them or squish them in your body. You can be out in a great gathering of those bees and they won't bother you whatsoever. Honeybees and bumblebees on your flowers are not apt to sting you as well. It's only when you come to their colonies and feel threatened that they become very defensive. Yeah. So The last
Okay.
question here,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
if you had 3 main takeaways to share with other people, plant for the bees. So planting for bees is really great. Minimize your pesticide use, and then just really enjoy all the native bees that we have here in the state. It's really incredible.
It is.
Jess
Okay.
Rice recommended a podcast on bees and wasps that discusses more about wasps and bees. So if anybody wants to check that out, it's listed on the chat session. There's one more question about the best way to give bees water or provide water resources for them.
Yeah, so honeybees do need extra water. I think bumblebees also appreciate having water resources. Honeybees actually use water to cool down the colony when it gets overheated. So hopefully beekeepers do this by providing, if you have a small pond or containers of water, and especially if you have neighbors with swimming pools, providing water for your bees and not having them go to your neighbor's swimming pools are great things, yeah. But the clean water is essential to them as well.
I think a few of these other questions we're going to get into as Mindy goes through some of the slides. There's some questions on bindweed and morning glory, and discussing whether or not herbicides are safe for some of the insects and whether or not monarchs or other pollinators can coexist with bees. I think if we go ahead and go through Mindy's presentation, we might be able to address some of these. And if not, we can certainly circle back and revisit some of them at the end.
Yeah, I'll stay around till the end here, yeah.
Great. Thanks so much, Diana. I'm let's see. Trying to, there it is. Okay, so are you seeing the correct the outline for tonight? Am I showing the right screen? Yes.
Yes, I see the correct
Thank you.
screen.
Okay, so this is what we're going to cover tonight, and instead of going through this bit by bit, I'm just going to go ahead and dive in here. So as the person who's been watching the chat, etc., that's Jenny Dowd. She's been great on our team. Becky Yeager has also been wonderful. I was going to have people introduce themselves, but things can go wrong with Zoom, so I'm just going to get through the team here. Pam Blackmore has been keeping us all organized with the survey 123 that you guys have answered, as well as keeping track of everybody in the emails, and we would be lost without her. Mariah Jackson is our new member of the team. USU employee. Jim Bocut is the main contact from the university, the Department of Agriculture and Food, where this program landed. The same with Cherie Edgington. Amanda Barth is our she's the rare insect coordinator for the state of Utah. Jim Spencer and Jackie Grant have been great in terms of keeping things moving, getting seed packets put together, getting seed packets out, getting people organized, etc. And I'm Mindy Wheeler. I'm also Utah State University, and I'm housed at the Division of Wildlife Resources in their habitat as a rare and native plant conservation project leader is my title. So quickly, just the origins of the Pollinator Habitat Program. It was passed by the legislature in 2021, and it was introduced by Representative Ashley Matthews. And it got a lot of traction that year. And so it started off with like $120,000, 60 of that was going to Jackie down at SUU. Anyway, long story short, it was created as a 3-year pilot pollinator program, and it's I think it's gaining even more traction thanks to you guys and everybody else who's been posting on our Facebook group. And so we are hoping to expand even more. The main thing, or a couple of main things, was the public education and outreach about pollinators, and then distributing the pollinator-friendly native seeds and plants. And one of the things about the program was that the state would take care of up to 25% of the cost of these projects, assuming that the other 75% would come from the awardees. And that's, the time that you guys put into prepping your land, working on it, any supplies that you buy, et cetera. And that's why when you get a survey later on in the season, if you guys could keep track of what you're spending, both time and materials for your projects, that helps us out greatly, just to show that we are getting that 25-75 match for the program. And we did receive additional funding from the 2023 session. And again, the summary and goals, what pretty much Diana talked about, to improve pollinator habitat and boost pollinator populations. The goal that we kind of put on ourselves was to get at least 90,000 native plants in the ground, as well as distribute up to 18 million native seeds. And yes, that sounds like a lot, but just as context, there is one of the grasses that you guys will be receiving this year, the wetland kits anyway, I think has at least 2 million seeds per pound. So you can get to that million seeds or 18 million seeds pretty quickly. So we do have wetland and upland habitat specific plants for both northern and southern Utah. Some of those plants, of course, do go, are good for both north and south. And we are encouraging and hoping that we can convince the legislature that this will be a fully funded ongoing program and not just a pilot program after those 3 years. So again, congrats on the award. This year, long story short, we have a lot of growers this year, and these are the names of the growers that we have. In the future, we will likely be using the state prison. They do amazing greenhouse work out there. And they have some great facilities out there now. So this year we have about 35,000 plants that are grown out, and most are in the 10 cubic inch. There's 6 inches deep or so and a couple inches wide. A lot of native plants like to really shoot down that deep root to get as much traction and water as possible. Excuse me. So in 2023, we received 2,000 requests for 2,204 kits from 341 applicants, and we awarded 1,072 of those, 237 awardees. So we have, that means 983 upland kits and 91 wetland kits. And what was exciting for us is that we got applications from 24 out of the 29 counties, which we were pretty ecstatic with. So this journey with native plants, as maybe some of you already know, it is a journey. Manage those expectations. It's some of them will perform really well, others just won't, and just be patient with it, and just have a sense of wonder about it, I guess is what I'm trying to say, in terms of just what comes up, what doesn't. And maybe you plant it this fall, you won't see it next spring, but what do you know, it'll reappear the following spring. Some of these native plants have been around a lot longer than we have, and they've got it figured out. We just got to be patient to try to understand them a little bit better. So, and again, some of these the blooms that we are trying to provide through these kits will be blooms throughout the seasons, spring, summer, and fall. And that, interestingly enough, to me anyway, that also is the case with some of the grasses that you guys will be getting. So there's a cool season grass and there's a warm season grass. So some of those do better in the spring and put their seed heads out, and then some of those grasses do better in the fall. So again, if you don't see some of those grasses, just hang on, and maybe it's one of those warm season grasses that will respond to those monsoons, those later monsoons. And some of those grasses are great, and this is something we can ask Diana in terms of I hear some of the around the bunch grasses is good habitat for some of the bumblebees and maybe some of the solitary bees as well as for host plants for various pollinators. So along with that, what will a successful project look like? And for the most part, I guess just having those blooms throughout the season so you can feed the bees and the pollinators throughout the entire season is really, what my bar would be for a successful project. But here again is, I realize that there are some gardeners out there that really like the manicured look, and you can do that with native plants. My landscape space is more of a little bit of a Darwinian approach to what's going to outcompete the others in terms of natives and the native seeds and plants that I could get. And so in terms of beauty, in my mind, it's sort of in the eye of the beholder. I absolutely love my yard. Some of my neighbors, it drives them crazy, but I do my best to educate, right? So in terms of site preparation and maintenance, we are hoping at this point that some weed control and or reduction of plant competition has already taken place. There's a whole bunch of different ways you can do that, but we hope that you will install all plants within a week or so of receiving those plants. And again, avoid use of pre-emergents, especially pre-emergents and pesticides. And then there is just a note here. So some of I think the big box stores have gotten, and maybe Diana can answer this question too. I think that some of the big box stores have gotten a little bit better about using neonicotinoids, which is a pesticide, when they grow some of these species out. So if should you go to a big box store and pick out some different pollinator plants, just ask as to whether they use neonicotinoids. And my guess is that you might have to ask the manager, et cetera, but it's a good thing to know, because that's a definite pesticide that is hurtful to pollinators. So the use of weed barrier, again, I think as Diana mentioned, we really advise against it, because so many of our native bees are ground nesting and they need that bare ground to get into the ground. Use of mulch is great, and leaf litter certainly, and the bees will still have access to that ground. Figure out the irrigation. Again, it all works. It's all water, whether it comes from a watering can, your sprinkler, or your hose. So the hope is just to get those plants that you received this year established and then let them go dormant for the winter. And hopefully we do this in the fall so that the most of the heat of the summer is done. So they won't be quite as shocked when they get into the ground from the nice greenhouse setting. And then why the focus on native plants from our perspective? And so this program will only offer native plants. And we just like to do that just because that's what the native pollinators have adapted to and evolved with. So we just like to go that route instead of introducing some of the horticultural stuff. And again, some of that horticultural stuff can also provide pollen and nectar, but it's just not as familiar to the bees, and may not feed the bees quite as healthfully, I guess, as the horticultural varieties. There's anyway some other things that we can touch on later. I don't really want to be talking too long because I'm sure you guys are full of questions. So navigating the website, if you just Google Utah Pollinator Habitat Program, you will get the link automatically. And you can peruse that website. We have updated the species that we are offering this year. There's a planting guide and maintenance guide up there, some ideas on layout design, weed management, etc. So these, again, all of these you can find on our website and learn a bit more about them. These are the species that we are offering this year that we are having grown out currently for the wetland and upland. And again, there's some differences between northern and southern Utah as well. So, and that information is up on the website as well. So this is what is up on the website for each species in terms of what it looks like, the information, the range and native habitat, growing tips, and then the wildlife supported. So each species has this information up on the website. It's PDFs, and you can click through those. We are currently working on a handbook that will have all this information in it as well, so you can have something in your hand and not have to be at your computer at all hours of the day trying to learn stuff. This is just a copy of the maintenance guide and the planting guide. Some really good information in there for those purposes. And sometimes, again, play around with it in terms of maintenance. And yeah, it's just interesting in terms of like which plants will reseed readily, which won't, how far will they spread, do they do it by seed dispersal or rhizomes? Just some things to try to get familiar with before you plant, but also to watch as your pollinator habitat grows. And yeah, I just have had a blast in terms of just watching mine mature and seeing which plants do really well in my area. So planting for edge effect, one of the things, and I think Jen can explain this better than I can, but in terms of just giving some room for those pollinators to sort of fly around and find those plants instead of spacing things out a little bit more instead of having something so crowded. Jen, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that, and maybe Diana can also provide some information, but there's been some really interesting research coming out about strip planting and kind of planting your habitat so that there's more edge effect on there, mostly because it's been suggested that increased edge effect can increase the diversity and the richness of the pollinators who can access your plants. So if you kind of create, clustered plantings of different species that are going to, produce at different times and provide those resources strategically, then you can actually support more pollinators in your habitat, not just for, diversifying, but also so you don't get, some bees that are resource guarding certain plants and seeing increases in predators that might, be detrimental to some of the other species that are also wanting to access those plants. So Diana, I don't know if you have any additional information on that.
I think those are great ideas, but also making room for your plants to reseed and spread a little bit. because the bigger the patches, the more bees you can provide support for, and the more attractive it will become too. There's also some of these plants will be host plants for the butterflies. So you may have what you think is a pest eating in the plant, and it may be a caterpillar of the beautiful butterfly later on. So recognizing that, those plants are going to be providing a lot of resources for pollinators, including butterflies and moths, which are outstanding, I think, too, in the
Right.
environment.
We actually had a concerned recipient last year that was worried that one of their plants was getting hit pretty hard by some caterpillars. And, kind of our reply to that was awesome. They're doing their job. That's what they're there for, is to provide resources for those pollinators. So don't be upset if you see, different species that you don't expect to see hitting those plants and utilizing them in ways that you weren't necessarily anticipating. That's what they're there for. And if that's what's happening, they're doing their job.
Yeah, I noticed on the wetland plants that there are several of the milkweed species included in that. So of course, those are going to be host plants for your monarch butterflies too. You'll also get one of my favorite beetles on there, a milkweed beetle, which is bright red with black circles on it, that I think's just totally beautiful insect too. So the other thing about milkweed is I've noticed that it's like a magnet for a lot of different bee species on the flowers. It's not only butterflies and moths, but everybody loves it.
Right. I think Joe Wilson actually put an article out about how many different native bees in Utah utilized just showy milkweed, and it was a huge number. So if you guys want to get into some of that, that should be in that book that Diana put up when she was giving her presentation, Bees in Our Backyard by Joe Wilson. He does some incredible research in Utah. And another thing too to mention is if things are getting eaten by pollinators, you don't have to worry, they're going to come back the next year. So they often will start reproducing. And as long as the root structure has room to grow and spread, typically those plants will rebound, even if they get hard hit by pollinators and caterpillars who like to eat them pretty much down to the nubs at times. So, kind of enjoy those moments and maybe look at them from a different light instead of getting upset that they're disappearing or getting used heavily.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, I've some of the penstemons that I have in my front yard, I'll watch the bumblebees come in, they'll turn upside down and then go further into the tube and buzz and buzz and buzz, and then they'll back out, turn back around and go to the next. And again, my neighbors kind of think I'm kind of funny because I'll sit in the middle of my garden and just watch these bumblebees in there. It's been a gas.
I think that's the best part of having a
Right.
native plant garden is just
Right.
watching and pollinator watching. Yeah.
Yep. And some of those, I am just really trying hard to get better on my bee identification because there are so many. Weed management. Oh boy, this is a tough one. And I know a question has already come up about bindweed or morning glory, and oh man, that is a tough one. In some cases, I don't know what to tell you other than just keep at it, because there's bindweed is one that just never gives up. What we're trying at one of our sites is solarizing, which of course takes a good hot summer, but putting a big piece of plastic over your bindweed and just cooking those things as much as you can. So we shall see how effective that is. And of course, so I guess one of the biggest things that I would recommend is just getting to know your weeds in every season, what they look like in every season. And so you know what to look for when they can be yanked at a really young age. So I think that's one of the biggest things, is to learn your weeds, which is not nearly as much fun. But so the other thing that this slide is showing, and I think Diana had a slide of this too, but some of the plants that have hollow stems, it's a great place for some of those bees to lay their eggs. So if you can leave those, that is an extra bonus for the pollinators. Watering frequencies. And again, this hopefully those PDFs on those species will help you figure out how much water. Of course, the wetland plants need a lot more water. And just to let everyone know that you can overwater some species. The penstemons really don't like a whole lot of water. Neither do the globe mallows or the northern sweetfetch. They just don't like it. I don't know if it's root rot or they just don't respond well to overwatering. And that these plants will be coming from the greenhouse where they are tended to quite carefully. So just try to wean them, watch them closely, water them, maybe again, depending on the heat, etc., watering them every other day for the first couple of weeks and then spread it out as the winter approaches. These are some additional resources. This webinar will be put up on our website, so you can come back to it and get these additional resources as desired. And then another couple of things that we wanted to just please, I guess, plead to please answer the questions in the next email that'll be coming soon. That'll again help us organize on the background or on the back end. And then those of you, I don't know how many of you on this webinar that our emails went to the spam box. If it did go to your spam box and you found it there, please mark us as not spam or something so we can effectively communicate with you. Sometimes it's been a lot of sleuthing to try to figure out what happened to that email, and it turns out, oh, it just went to spam. So
there's been a lot of questions for where you can get the plant signs. The next round of questions, surveys that you answer will ask you if you want a plant sign. So if you want a plant sign, get on and answer those questions and we'll get you one.
That's right. Yep. Plant sign, we'll ask a couple other. So here's some of the information that I assume that many of you want, and this will also come in your next email. So in the northern counties, we will be distributing on September 16th. So we'll have one distribution center in Logan and another distribution center in Roosevelt on Saturday, September 16th. I will add the address of the distribution center in Roosevelt after this. Sorry, I just got that information earlier today. So we just thought it would be better for some of those northern counties to get these plants before the end of September so that they could get them in the ground. So the northern counties of Summit, Wasatch, Cache, Weber, Rich, and Box Elder. Your pickup will be in Logan on Saturday, September 16th. You can make an appointment for Friday evening if you can't make that. We'll be spending a lot of time in that greenhouse over the next while, so it makes it easy to make that Friday evening option available. And Uinta Basin again also for Duchesne, Daggett, and Uinta counties on Saturday, September 16th, 10 to 2 in Roosevelt. And again, I will get that that address up soon.
Did you say Tooele County, Mindy?
Tooele will be in the central, and I am locked up. Okay, here we go. So this is the central pickup, and this is Salt Lake, Davis, Tooele, Utah counties. This information will also be in your next email. And this will be Saturday, September 30th at the Lone Peak Conservation Center down near the old prison site in Draper. And this is where we had it last year. If we have repeat awardees on this webinar. And then for Southern Utah on Friday, October 13th, we'll be at the Grand Center in Moab. And then Saturday, the 14th, will be in Cedar City on the SUU campus from 10 to 4. So these are southern counties, so that's mainly Kane, Washington, Iron, Grand, of course. I think there's one more. And again, so those of you in Southern Utah, you will receive a question as to whether, because I realize some of you might be directly in between Moab and Cedar, so we will be asking you a question as to whether you would rather pick up in Moab or Cedar City. So please, if you're in Southern Utah, please pay close attention to that question so we know where to have your plants for you. And okay, good. I'm kind of glad. I'm kind of tired of hearing myself talk. So
Mindy, since we're already on the plant topic, we've had a lot of questions about how many plants per kit and roughly how much space that will take up in vehicles so that they know how to prepare for transport.
Okay, so it is roughly 30 plants per kit. So we tried to do a 3 kit minimum, so that's 90 plants. And for the time being, a 3 kit minimum was essentially to keep our sanity, because we're trying to keep track of 270 awardees at the time being. And if we awarded people 1 kit, we would it takes a lot of organizing of all the different plant species. So most of the plants, again, are coming in those tubes that are about 6 inches deep and about 1.5 inches wide. So if you're getting 3 kits, 90 plants, in theory, it fits in a 1 foot by 2 foot flat, but not everybody's going to have that flat. So what I might recommend is if people bring maybe some old gallon pots or something from your garage or something, so you can put those tubes into that pot. But really, they're pretty manageable size this year. Last year, for a lot of reasons, we had a lot of different sizes, but this year it should. So 3 kits should take, if they're side by side and in a nice, neat little flat, it should take 1 to 2 feet. But I would definitely leave a bit more room in your vehicle for the 90 plants for 3 kits. I hope that helps. I took a look at some of the plants the other day from one of our growers, and yeah, there's a lot of plants in one of those flats, but to give them some breathing room and stuff, I would bring a few maybe gallon pots or something else to bring your plants home in. Hopefully that answers the question. Okay, other questions at this point? I can get into the chat.
We have several from kind of the beginning of I'm just going to sort of maybe start from the beginning and go through some of the questions that people asked. I had somebody ask about documenting bees and how they can help.
My suggestion would be iNet, because there's photos of bees that similar bees that you might find, although it's a hard one, because beginners with bees, I wouldn't even know where to start. So I guess there's a couple of places. So certainly we would encourage posting up on our Facebook page too, because there's a couple of people that watch that Facebook page that that might be able to help in terms of identification. If you think you're seeing something really unique, and if you know your bees, I would try iNat, which is a great app that you can download and get a lot of answers. So you can post your photo as well, and then it goes out to we'll say the bee community, and then people will weigh back in and say, I think you have seen this. And it's also, recorded. Thank you. It's also recorded in a larger database that can be helpful in terms of trying to document our bee populations as well, pollinator populations in general.
So for those who are unfamiliar, iNaturalist is an app that you can download, or it's also just a website that you can visit, that you can take pictures of plants, animals, insects, pretty much anything you want, and it posts it to the location where you're having that sighting. And then there's a host of specialists that can get on and help you identify stuff if you need help, or if you're just wanting to help contribute to the database. It's basically like a citizen science program where you can contribute what you're seeing and where you're seeing it at what time of year and whatnot. So it's a really great resource for helping you learn to identify stuff, and also for just sharing with the scientific community. And I posted it on, I posted the link in the chat.
Great. One of the questions that I saw that sort of can't follow all of them, but anyway, is there a way to know what you're getting now? And I can give you a general idea. We have a lot of showy milkweed. We have a lot of fernbush. We have Great Basin, well, for the northern counties, we have Great Basin wild rye, and we have blue bunch wheatgrass. For the southern regions and some of the central, we have little blue stem, which is another grass, side oats, grama. Again, I think you can also you can look up on the website, and I think we updated the charts for the southern and northern plants today, and so those should be relatively up to date in terms of what you will be receiving in your upland and wetland kits this year.
Yes, we also had somebody ask for transporting. What do we need 1 gallon buckets for?
Oh, if you just bring the 1 gallon buckets, it just makes it easier to have some sort of carrier for your tubelings, your little plant tubelings. Sorry, I guess maybe I didn't make that clear. Yeah, just plant transport, essentially.
We had a lot of people ask about what they can do between now and pickup to prepare your site and the soil specifically.
Interestingly enough, my biggest suggestion would be just try to get rid of the plants that you don't want, weeds, and really anything else that you don't want. In terms of, I generally would not recommend amending your soil, because these native plants are generally adapted to really poor nutrient soils. But what also might be helpful is maybe have some mulch around that you can put around your plants as well, just to maybe keep some of that moisture in for the when you do water them.
And I just want to add to that on the website, there are planting and maintenance guides that go through all the different options about how you can prepare your site, and what specifically, I think we had somebody ask about rocks as mulch also. So, and weed barrier and things. It goes through all of those options, and why we prefer to keep some of the ground barrier free, so that a lot of those ground dwelling solitary bees can actually nest into the soil and into the dirt. But if you go check out the website, you should have access to those PDFs, and you can read through there. And if you have any other specific questions or concerns, you can reach out to us through email, and we can address those one-on-one.
Some of the questions that I'm seeing come up too, maybe Becky's answering them. People are asking whether they can pick up somewhere else if they can't make a pickup date. we will accommodate some of that, I guess. I kind of hesitate a little bit just because it's the logistics are getting a little difficult already. So a suggestion that we make is see if you can find a friend or neighbor to pick up your plants for you, and that will work just as well.
We had several people with 3 to 6 kits use trucks or small SUVs and just put the seats down, and they were able to transport their plants effectively. So I'm still seeing a lot of concerns about space needs. You should be able to get it in a standard car as long as you have enough back space and you can lay some seats down.
Yeah, can I just mention too that, for those people who are wanting to switch locations and it's okay to have somebody else pick up your plants, just have them bring that agreement with them. The hardest thing for us is when you make changes like a couple of days before on your pickup site or the day of, that really messes us up. So please try to stick with your plan once you make it, and don't make any last minute changes on us.
There's some questions about hardening off and whether or not it's ideal to get plants in the ground ASAP or to sort of water the flats and harden off for a few days or a week before putting them in the ground.
It's a tough question, frankly, because I think some hardening off should have occurred at the growers. I just a couple of these growers are new this year, so you might do a little bit of hardening off when you get them back home, but don't wait too long. And that's again, who knows when our first freeze is going to come, but it's good to get those plants good and comfy outside before the winter truly sets in. I don't know if that really answered the question again. So I always feel like I answer questions with "it depends," right? And sorry, I know that's annoying.
Some questions are asking whether or not they can intersperse other plants like tulips and daffodils and crocus or other non-native plants into the landscape with the native plants as well.
I don't see why not. I guess again, yeah, if you know the source, I guess sometimes again with those plants that you might get at the big box stores, just see if you can get an answer as to whether their growers use neonicotinoids as when they grow their plants, and maybe Diana can answer questions about neonicotinoids.
There was also a question about neonicotinoids and how long they last in the soil.
Ooh, I don't know how long they last in the soil. Diana, can you answer that question?
Yeah, I can answer that one. Neonicotinoids unfortunately last for a very, very long time, multiple years before they can be broken down. So if you do buy a plant that you know has it, that's been watered with it, I guess you could try to remove as much soil from the plant as possible to get rid of the pesticide that they haven't taken up yet. And then just go forward. So I guess talking with your nursery person or your big box store and just encouraging them to avoid bringing plants in like that. There was an initiative by some plant producers to actually put on the label that they were neonicotinoid free and whatnot. So you can just encourage that they try to give you that information. Yep. There's a lot of the pesticides too. So there's some that make it sound like they promote the growth of roses and flowers, but you really need to look at the label and see what's in it. If these neonicotinoids may be present in those as well.
There's a lot of questions about the agreement, and just so you guys know that it'll be coming in this next email, which will be towards the end of the week. So you'll have the opportunity to fill out your agreement. You maybe already covered this, request a sign, and also a C packet. And then those will be the seed packet and the sign if you choose to select those. If you want those will be given out at the time you pick up your habitat kits.
And you'll also be given a unique habitat kit identification number. So that'll be, you know, if you have somebody else coming to pick up your plants for you, that'll be how we find you and figure out what you're getting. So take note of that when you get that in the next letter as well. We had a question about deer and any sort of fencing around the pollinator area. It might also be worth touching on livestock and grazing with this question.
So yeah, the deer, I think we got some feedback last year. These plants are coming from a very nice environment of the greenhouse, and they smell really good to deer. And sometimes we had an awardee last year that, you know, they will try anything. If they're hungry enough, they will try anything, and they'll pull it up and root ball and everything, then they'll spit it right back out because they didn't like it. So if you're in a very deer prone area, I would try to do something about that. I think people have tried spraying pepper spray on their plants so the deer, it doesn't smell as good. I think there's also coyote, like powdered coyote tea that you can buy or something to spread near your plant so that the deer won't be as attracted to them. I honestly have not tried any of those, so I don't know. But again, if you're in a deer prone area, if you can put a fence around it, or you can do, you know, individual fences with chicken wire or something of that sort. If you know, if you can, I guess. And livestock again, hopefully, the livestock, I don't know how many of you have active livestock, but generally, again, these plants might smell good to livestock as well. So you might want to keep them out until they get a bit more settled in and established as possible.
I know we hit on the soil question, but we did have a question about drainage. So maybe we should hit on that and what most of the plants in our kits need for drainage, especially if there's some areas with clay soils.
Yeah, clay soils are tough, are really tough. In general, I guess I will say that native plants really do like pretty good drainage. If you think about our native soils, so coarser soils. So sometimes, you know, if you do have, like in some of my landscape, I have like the modeling clay. I mean, it's stuff that you can make a little toy doll out of. It's ridiculous. You know, sometimes you can put some gypsum to break that up. Some people have added some sand to their soils. It's just kind of a tough go, but some of the wetland stuff might do a little bit better with some of the clay, but I don't know who's asking that question, what kind of kit they're getting, but yeah, clay can be tough. And again, some of this also might be trial and error. So, you know, if you have maybe 4 inches of quote unquote topsoil, and then clay, maybe that's enough. So, you know, I would say go ahead and try it if you think you can get away with it, and then hopefully you'll have your answer in not too long. But yes, generally drainage is a good thing for native.
We had a question about trees, especially for the southern Utah mountain properties. And I'm not sure, let's see, it was Ryan McAllister that asked this. You can plant additional things with your kits. We are not providing trees this year. There will be some shrubs, hopefully. But if you have any further questions on that, you can jump on right now and ask. We will have some mountain mahogany available. and fern bush this year. That's a new addition to the kits this year.
Yeah, and just a warning, we won't have mountain mahogany for all, so.
Right.
Yeah, so, I see Becky and Mariah answering questions as we go, so if folks want to unmute themselves, I did see something, do chickens or other, what was it? Chickens or other livestock?
We had a question about dog pet toxicity, if any of the plants are consumed. I'm guessing chickens and livestock might fit with that one as well.
And I think one of the question about chickens and livestock, I think, would they pose a threat to the pollinators? And I might let Diana take this one, but I would say, I think it could all work together, just depending on what you have to feed the pollinators and your chickens, I think.
Yeah, so I guess if you do know that you have a bumblebee nest or a colony, you're fortunate to have one, protecting it from your chickens would be a good idea so they don't get in there and scratch into the nest. There will also be potentially other animals looking for those, so like skunks and raccoons and some other rodents may want to get in to dig those out. So helping to protect it if you do know you have an active nesting area would be great.
And Diana, while you have the floor, do the bumblebees or any other bees like the bases of the bunch grasses?
I think they probably would, if you, especially not the season that the guys are planting them, but the next year when you have the grass materials still there, leaving that the plant residue to create a shelter would be good. I think the bees would find their way underneath it to create a nest down in there. Yeah.
Great, and that's
so it gives you an excuse to maintain an untidy garden in a bit. Bees like those stems, those broken twigs and the tall grass to make their nests in. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think somewhere do we have up on the website about leave the leaves? Jen, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, there's some information on the maintenance guides. Typically what most people suggest with native pollinators is in the fall, don't take away all the leaf litter because a lot of species will utilize that leaf litter to overwinter and protect themselves. So what you can do is kind of brush it off to an area that maybe, you know, if you don't want it in your grass, that's fine. Brush it off to the perimeters and kind of get it to an area where it's not going to cause you issues of conscience. And then they typically say, and Diana, maybe you can help me with this, but they typically say wait until temperatures are above 50 or 55 degrees in the spring for at least a week before you start cleaning up some of that stuff, because that kind of gives the spring critters a chance to emerge and get clear of all that leaf litter and come out of the ground before you start cleaning stuff up and getting rid of it.
Yeah, just to give a caution for if you're cleaning things up, but you notice a large bumblebee flying around that area, going in and out, she may have her nest there, so that gives you a clue where she might be nesting.
Right, and we have a lot of bunch grasses in our kits this year, which we've been finding more information of how they can be beneficial to some of the solitary ground nesting bee species. So we're seeing a lot more use of solitary bees using kind of those mounded areas where some of the grasses are establishing. So same thing, just kind of be cautious around those areas and maybe take your time, leave the fall leaves, give them a chance to sort of overwinter successfully before you start cleaning stuff up later in the spring, if possible.
Sorry, should have stopped sharing a long time ago. Any other questions? I see that the chat has been very active, so
we have a couple people asking about if they want to move their plot location. It's on the same property, but in a couple different spots from where they had originally established their polygons, if that's possible.
It's, I guess, I'm not quite sure how to answer this one. I guess it's possible if it's pretty darn similar to the photo that you sent us to start with, but because that's sort of how we ranked, we looked at all those photos and we ranked them in terms of, whether the site looked amenable or not. And so if it looks pretty darn close, but if you do, so I guess I'll just say that we prefer that you not do that, but if you think if it's a better spot, then I guess please do keep in touch with us and just let us know that and send a couple photos.
There is also a 1-year report. So after your habitat has been established, we ask that you do a 1-year report and check in and send up some photos of progress and any information you have about survivalship and what plants worked and didn't, and sort of some pictures of your habitat. So that's another chance to sort of let us know where you are with things and how things either went according to plan or were different than what you expected.
And that's just want to add on, thanks, Jen. And that's really where you guys help us sort of direct where the program is going to go in terms of what are the winners, what are, the more difficult plants, I guess. And, anything else that you want to share with us in terms of, the bees were all over this one in a particular month or something of that nature. It's a little bit of community science as well in terms of just trying to find those native plants that are going to work well for people's landscapes. So your reports are wonderful for that. Full of great information, and I love seeing all the chatter on the Facebook page too. It's a lot of fun to drop in on that and see how people are sharing information and what's worked for them and what hasn't. So
we had quite a few people wanting to reach out and kind of see how some of last year's folks' gardens are coming along. The Facebook page is a great place. It's not actually a place for us to so much interact, but for the recipients to interact and kind of show off their habitats and kind of check in with each other about what's working and what's not working, and to get really good ideas for sort of layouts and strategies and whatnot. So we encourage you guys to get on the Facebook page and make some network connections if you can. We also have funders that check in on that and have loved some of the feedback that we've been getting. So it's a great place for us to get continued funding and support.
Absolutely. Are there other questions? And again, I think, the emails that you guys will be getting, you can certainly respond to those or just email us at Utah, what is it? UT Pollinator Habitat Program at gmail.com. Is that right? I think.
Yeah, I can put it in the chat.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
There
I
it
put
is.
the Facebook page and
put it in the
the web,
Okay.
the Gmail account in the chat. So check there.
Great.
Were there any questions that I missed? Somebody wanted to know if monarchs and bees coexist.
So just to answer that, yeah, definitely. They're great friends, especially when it comes to milkweed and other flowers. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I heard someone describe the milkweeds as having pools of nectar. So it's just kind of fun to think about.
Yeah.
Somebody else asked if dragonflies pollinate.
So dragonflies are not a pollinator, but they're a great insect to have around because they love to eat all those mosquitoes that bother everyone. So I'm always happy when I see more dragonflies come over in my yard.
Mm.
Right, and I missed the one about snails and snail control. If there's any suggestions for that.
Yeah, my feeling is these native plants like a lot less water than what a snail likes. So once you get them in the ground and you're not watering them as much, it's a little bit different than the rest of your yard and garden. You may not have the snail problem anymore.
And Mindy, maybe you want to touch on sort of how long things can take in a native plant garden, especially when you're doing seeds, and sort of what the process is with expectations.
With seeds, I don't make, if I put down a native seed mix, I don't make any conclusions as to its success or failure until 3 to 5 years. Sometimes it just takes that correct amount of time, precipitation, whatever it might be for those seeds to break dormancies. And they just need that. Each species tends to have that different key to unlock its secrets and go forth and grow and reproduce. In terms of plantings, gosh, I think, you know, maybe even 2 to 3 years for that, up to 3 years to try to figure out what survived and what hasn't. Again, just be patient and approach it with a big sense of wonder. And again, the Facebook page, email us in terms of you know, what you're seeing, etc. Just for some check-in or a little bit of validation or whatever you might need. It's just it's a fun journey, especially when you see all those native pollinators visiting. So.
We have a question about ants. Does anybody want to talk about ants as pollinators and how they can actually be a positive occurrence?
So ants can be a predator for some of the pest insects. The other thing that ants like to do, but I've never seen an issue on the native plants, is that they may tend aphids. And so you may have aphids and notice the ants there, and they're collecting the honeydew from the aphids. When we've studied bee health in terms of that, we've never really seen an issue from ants getting into the bee nest and killing the bees.
We had another question about voles, that there's lots of voles in the area. Any tips on keeping them at bay or from eating plant roots?
That's a tough one.
Find a big cat.
Okay.
So it seems like there's been a lot of questions about different pests and concerns. I think one of the things that people tend to find as they kind of go on this journey and start figuring out kind of what a native plant naturalized area is that eventually things are going to sort of find a balance. And if once you cut out the pesticides and cut out the herbicides, you're going to see kind of fluctuations in different numbers of critters that are visiting your patch, and eventually things kind of seem to find a balance if you let them be instead of trying to control everything.
Yeah, you'll get incredible diversity coming into your garden, which to me is just part of the fascination of seeing what else out there and how it's grown.
Absolutely.
It's not always an easy thing to embrace, though. It's a different journey for some people. So
right, and I was
journey
talking about this the other day in terms of like everything being on a human 1 year time frame, and that's just not the time frame that these plants work on. I think a lot of folks, myself included, often want that immediate gratification, and you just gotta wait it out a bit.
We had some great advice from a recipient last year, and they recommended keeping the plant labels with the plants so that you can help identify things in the spring when they pop back up or don't pop back up, and to make sure that you plant them fairly deeply so that the wind or weather doesn't dislodge them.
I've got a question.
Go ahead, Mark.
I'm curious about what other people have done about bindweed. I've tried a couple different things that have worked partially. One of them is, as probably most people know, is you just are really persistent about tearing their heads off and eventually exhaust the plant. But the other one I've tried is, and I don't know if this is good practice or not because of the use of Roundup, but use a plastic garbage bag and poke a hole in the bottom of it and then thread the head of the plant through the hole and spray it with Roundup and then fold the bag over that so that the leafy top is marinating in the Roundup, and then put a rock on top of that and just let it do its thing. And that works pretty well, but it's kind of labor intensive. But those are the only two ways I've found. I don't have a huge problem with bindweed, but boy, you've really got to be persistent with both of those methods to get rid of it. It's a tough thing to get rid of.
Yeah, I'll second that in terms of there is a biocontrol for bindweed, and I've tried it, and I think it's just, it does not work on the time frame that is acceptable to me, because I heard the other day that it takes 10 years to get established, and I'm just in the meantime my bindweed just goes hog wild. But it's something like if you have a native area or something that you know you're not going to be able to control, that might be something to pursue, and if bindweed that's available. Just a thought, but I have too much bindweed, and it's very frustrating. There's got to be, well, anyway, I keep thinking there's got to be something that can be developed from bindweed so that people can go out there and pick it for their delight and get money from it or something.
I have gotten rid of it just by cutting it off, like really consistently.
Yeah.
Like, don't let it flower. And you don't chop up the roots, you just take the head off. And I don't know, you got to do it all season. And I've been doing it for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. And it's markedly less, but it's still there.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, that's certainly a start. I mean, that might be a good conversation for the Facebook page to get some thoughts on bindweed control going on the Facebook page.
It's really amazing some of the insight that people have on that page. It's really worth taking a look and sparking up conversations, because people have some great ideas on there and they've tried just about everything. So I highly recommend getting on there and interacting a little.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll definitely put it out there and see if people have any other ideas.
Yeah.
I'd also be interested in knowing people's thoughts on mulch, because my area of planting started off with very sandy clay soil. We call it blow sand around here, really fine silt, and no organic material in the soil. So I've been mulching for 6 years, I guess. And so I'm always looking for the best things. But, if I'm putting in these plants that are in these planters, I really want to make their chance of survival as good as I can. And my problem is getting enough material together. So I've used everything. Chipped material from like weedy plants to chipped bark, chopped straw, gravel, anything I can find. And so I'm wondering if, what's good. Did people have some good ideas on mulch? Because the places I've mulched, I've had really good luck with seed beds, putting seed down and growing from seed. But without the mulch, it's like, forget it. They germinate and die. So any ideas on mulch?
We go over some of the different options in the planting guide. I think it's regional. You know, what I've kind of found in our area up in northern Cache Valley is I actually use the mulch, the premium mulch from the landfill, and it's worked really well for me. And it's done a great job at suppressing weeds. And I haven't gotten a whole lot of, you know, usually one of the things I tell people to be careful of is weed seeds, because those can be incorporated a lot into those if you get them from different sources. But I've had really good luck up here. So I think it would be regional and kind of depend on what resources are available in your area. But yeah, maybe check out the planting guide and see what some of the options are there. You know, we discussed pine needles and gravel mulch and all kinds of different stuff. A lot of people are doing sheet mulching this year with cardboard, and that's been really successful for some people. And it does break down eventually. So, you know, maybe still leave regions that are open for the bees to get through and some exposed soil. That was actually one of the questions, Diana, too, is can bees eventually get through some of the broken down cardboard in habitats, and how long that might take? Any ideas on that?
Is that shredded cardboard, or are you talking about laying sheets of cardboard down to kill
cardboard for
I
weed
think
suppression with mulch on top?
Yeah, so once the cardboard starts to break down and the bees can get to the soil, they won't have an issue, but it will probably hinder some of them at first. There are some
first few
bees
years.
that can choose through probably the cardboard to get down in there, especially if it's slightly damp.
I think with
I'm
that-
in southern Utah, and we get like 10 inches of rain a year. And if I put cardboard in the soil, it would be there for 20 years. We don't have enough moisture stuff doesn't decay very rapidly.
I would agree with you there, Mark. I did it in my yard in West Jordan, and it was still there like 3 years later.
Yeah, I think it depends on how much moisture is in your soil, and unless we get a heavy snow year, yeah, I don't think that's workable in the South.
Right. Yeah. Again, like I think a lot of them are regional, so you kind of have to see what works for your area and what options are available.
It did work really well though. So like, I think was it you, Jen, that said maybe just do certain areas.
Yeah. So we are at an hour and a half, and so I think we shall bid you adieu, but keep the conversation going with us and with each other, and be on the lookout for that email that will be coming at the end of this week, and answer that so we know whether you want to sign a seed packet. You'll have your project number. So things are starting to line up, and yeah, we will look forward to meeting most of you as you pick up your plants.
Well, thanks. This is a fantastic program. I'm really excited to be able to participate, and good luck to everybody.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Thank you guys all for participating.
Yeah. Bye.
Good night.